There's one type of person that makes a narcissist physically uncomfortable. Not the aggressive one, not the loud one, the quiet one, the one who sits still, observes everything, reacts to nothing. And here's what nobody talks about. Narcissists aren't afraid of your anger. They feed on it. They aren't afraid of your tears. They collect them. But your silence, your stillness, that breaks them. Because a narcissist's entire system runs on one fuel: control. Control over what you feel, what you believe, what you see, and a quiet empath sees everything. Before the mask slips, before the manipulation lands, before the game even begins, it's already over. You can't con someone who felt the con coming. That's not sensitivity. That's not weakness. That is the most dangerous thing a narcissist will ever face. And they know it. There's something that happens in a room when a quiet empath walks in. You might not notice it immediately, but the narcissist does. Within minutes, sometimes within seconds. Because silence, real silence, is not empty. It never was. Most people treat silence like a gap that needs to be filled. An awkward pause. A social failure. They rush to cover it, fix it, explain it away. They talk faster, laugh louder, perform harder. And a narcissist? A narcissist has spent their entire life exploiting exactly that discomfort. They know that when people feel awkward, they start talking. And when people start talking without thinking, they hand over everything. Their insecurities, their needs, their pressure points, all of it, offered freely, just to escape a few seconds of quiet. But the quiet empath doesn't do that. They sit in the silence like it belongs to them. Because it does. This is the first thing that unsettles a narcissist. They throw out their usual bait and nothing comes back. No nervous laughter. No over-explanation. No desperate attempt to be liked or understood. Just calm, just stillness. And when that happens for the first time in maybe a long time, the narcissist is the most uncomfortable person in the room. Think about what silence actually communicates at a psychological level. When you are completely at ease saying nothing, you are telling every person around you something profound, that you do not need their approval. You are not performing. You are not auditioning. You are simply present, watching, taking everything in. That kind of person cannot be easily manipulated, because manipulation at its core requires a gap, a need, a hunger, something the target wants badly enough that you can use it against them. But someone who is genuinely still, genuinely unbothered, they don't give you a gap to work with. A narcissist walks into every interaction with a mental checklist. They are scanning, reading the room, looking for who wants to be validated, who wants to be chosen, who needs something. That information is their ammunition. And they are extraordinarily good at finding it, because most people wear their needs on the surface. Most people are easy to read because they are desperately trying to be understood. The quiet empath is not trying to be understood. And that single difference changes everything. What makes this even more fascinating is that the empath is not being strategic about it. They are not sitting there calculating how to unsettle someone. They are simply being themselves. They are processing. They are feeling the energy of the room, sensing what is real and what is performance, noticing the tiny inconsistencies between what someone is saying and what their body is doing. They are doing all of this internally, quietly, without announcing any of it. That is what makes it so powerful. Performed confidence can be spotted. Rehearsed calm can eventually crack. But genuine stillness, the kind that comes from someone who is actually deeply rooted in who they are, that cannot be faked and it cannot be manipulated away. The narcissist keeps waiting for the reaction, keeps waiting for the empath to need something, want something, slip up somehow. And the empath just keeps watching, keeps feeling, keeps knowing. There is an old idea that says the most powerful person in any negotiation is the one most willing to walk away. But there is something even more powerful than that. It is the person who never needed the negotiation to go their way in the first place. The person who came in whole. The person who brought their own sense of worth into the room and never once looked around to see if anyone else was confirming it. That is what silence does. That is what stillness carries inside it. There is a fundamental difference between someone who wants to be seen and someone who wants to be reflected. Most people want to be seen. They want another person to look at them fully, the good parts, the complicated parts, the parts they haven't figured out yet, and still choose to stay. That is a deeply human need. There is nothing wrong with it. But a narcissist doesn't want that. Not really. What they want is something far more specific, far more controlled, and far more fragile. They want a mirror. They want someone who reflects back exactly what they project. Someone who confirms the image they have carefully constructed. Someone who says yes when they need yes, who admires when they need admiration, who believes the version of the story they are currently telling. Not because that version is true, but because it needs to be true. Because the entire internal structure of a narcissist depends on that version staying intact. And here is where the quiet empath becomes a problem. Because an empath is not a mirror. An empath is a window. And you cannot control what a window sees. You cannot adjust the angle. You cannot soften the light. Whatever is actually there, the window shows it. And a quiet empath, without saying a single word, without making a single accusation, reflects back something the narcissist never wanted anyone to see. The real version, the unfiltered one. The one underneath all the performance and the charm and the carefully managed image. Most people around a narcissist don't even realize they have become mirrors. It happens gradually. They start agreeing more, questioning less. They learn through a slow and painful process of trial and error which reactions are safe and which ones cost too much. Over time, they begin to shrink themselves down into whatever shape the narcissist needs them to be. And they don't always notice it happening. Because the narcissist is skilled. They don't demand compliance loudly. They reward reflection quietly. A little more warmth here. A little more approval there. Until the people around them have reorganized their entire personality around keeping that one person comfortable. The quiet empath never goes through that process. Not because they are resistant or defensive, but because they are paying attention to something different. While everyone else is focused on how the narcissist is making them feel, wanted, special, chosen, the empath is watching the pattern. They are noticing what happens when someone disagrees. They are feeling the shift in energy when the narcissist doesn't get what they want. They are tracking the gap between what this person says about themselves and what their actual behavior reveals over time. And that gap, the empath feels it early, sometimes before they even have the words to explain it. This is deeply threatening to a narcissist because their greatest tool is narrative control. They are the author of their own story, and they need everyone in their life to be a character who plays their assigned role without improvising. The moment someone steps outside that role, the moment someone looks at them with clear, calm, unbothered eyes and simply doesn't buy the story, the whole narrative starts to wobble. And the quiet empath doesn't challenge the narrative loudly. They don't argue. They don't confront. They just remain themselves, fully, quietly, completely themselves. And that authenticity, that refusal to reshape their perception to match someone else's preference, acts like a mirror held up to the narcissist's mirror. Suddenly, the reflection bounces back differently. Suddenly, the image doesn't look quite right. That is the moment a narcissist realizes this person cannot be used the way others have been used, cannot be shaped, cannot be managed. And that realization doesn't make them back away. It makes them intensify. Because a narcissist does not accept losing a mirror without a fight. There is something that happens inside an empath that most people never fully understand. Even empaths themselves sometimes struggle to explain it. They will tell you they just had a feeling, that something felt off, that they couldn't point to one specific thing but the whole picture didn't sit right, and the people around them often dismiss that. They say you're overthinking, you're being too sensitive, you're seeing problems that aren't there. But here's what's actually happening beneath the surface. An empath's nervous system is wired differently, not metaphorically, literally. Years of emotional attunement, of reading rooms and feeling shifts and noticing what people don't say as much as what they do, has trained their brain to process behavioral information at a speed and depth that most people simply don't operate at. They are not guessing. They are not being paranoid. They are pattern matching. And they are doing it constantly, automatically, without even deciding to. Every person carries behavioral patterns, rhythms, consistencies. The way someone talks about themselves versus how they talk about others, the way their energy shifts when a certain topic comes up, the way their words and their face don't quite line up in the same direction, the way they treat a waiter versus how they treat a CEO. These patterns are always there. Most people notice them eventually, or after months, sometimes years, after the damage is already done. The quiet empath notices them in weeks, sometimes days. And with a narcissist, the patterns are particularly distinct once you know what you're looking at. Because a narcissist is always running a program, always performing a version of themselves that has been calibrated for maximum impact. They have learned through years of practice exactly how much warmth to display, exactly when to be vulnerable, exactly how to make someone feel like the most important person in the room. And it works extraordinarily well on almost everyone. Because most people experience charm at face value. They feel the warmth and they conclude there is warmth. They see the vulnerability and they conclude there is depth. They feel chosen and they conclude they are special. And none of that is stupid. It is human. Charm is designed to bypass critical thinking. That is literally its function. But an empath doesn't just feel the warmth. They feel the warmth and simultaneously notice that it appeared at a very specific moment, right after they revealed something personal, right after the narcissist needed something. They feel chosen and simultaneously notice that everyone in this person's stories is either a villain or an audience member, that there are no equals, that every relationship they describe somehow centers back on them. These are patterns, consistent, repeating, unmistakable patterns, and the quiet empath catalogs them without trying to, without even meaning to. The information just accumulates, quietly, steadily, until one day the picture becomes impossible to ignore. What makes this particularly powerful is that the empath rarely announces what they are seeing. They don't walk up to the narcissist and say, "I see what you're doing." They don't make accusations or start arguments. They simply become a little more still, a little more watchful. They pull back in ways that are almost imperceptible to anyone who isn't paying close attention. But the narcissist pays close attention. That is one thing they are genuinely good at. And they feel that subtle shift. They feel the empath becoming harder to reach, harder to impress, harder to manage. And they cannot figure out why, because the empath hasn't done anything dramatic, hasn't made a single move that can be called out or addressed or turned into a conflict. They have simply started seeing clearly, and they have gone quiet about what they see. That combination, clear vision and deliberate silence, is something a narcissist has very few defenses against. Because you cannot argue with someone who hasn't accused you of anything. You cannot manipulate someone who already understands the mechanism. You cannot gaslight someone who has been quietly documenting the pattern from the very beginning. There is a moment in every relationship with a narcissist where they test you. It doesn't always look like a test. It rarely announces itself. It comes disguised as a comment that lands just a little too sharp, a joke that isn't quite a joke, a silence that stretches just long enough to make you uncomfortable, a subtle criticism wrapped inside a compliment. And they are watching, carefully, precisely. They are watching to see what you do with that discomfort. Whether you shrink, whether you apologize, whether you get angry, whether you chase, because your reaction is the data they need. Every narcissist operates on an emotional economy. They are constantly investing small provocations and harvesting the emotional responses those provocations generate. Your anxiety becomes their leverage. Your anger becomes their justification. Your tears become their evidence that they are powerful enough to affect you that deeply. Every emotional reaction you give them is a currency they collect and spend later, in ways you won't see coming, at moments you won't be prepared for. This is not accidental. This is the system. And it works with almost everyone, because almost everyone has been taught that emotional reactions are involuntary. That if someone hurts you, you respond. That if someone pushes, something in you pushes back. That your feelings are things that happen to you rather than things that move through you. And so when the narcissist presses the button, the reaction comes. Reliably. Predictably. And they file that away. The quiet empath breaks this system completely. Not through suppression. Not through coldness. Not through building walls so thick that nothing gets in. That is not what emotional regulation actually is. Real emotional regulation is something far more sophisticated and far more powerful than simply not feeling. It is the ability to feel everything, fully, completely, without flinching, and still choose your response. It is the space between the stimulus and the reaction. That tiny gap where most people have no control at all. The quiet empath has learned to live in that gap. So when the narcissist throws out that sharp comment, the empath feels it. They notice the sting. They register the intention behind it. Their nervous system processes the provocation completely. And then nothing. No visible reaction. No defensive comeback. No wounded silence that broadcasts how much it landed. Just a calm, steady, unbothered presence that continues exactly as it was before. And that response, or rather that non-response, is genuinely destabilizing to a narcissist. Because they pressed the button and nothing happened. They invested a provocation and got zero return, and now they are in unfamiliar territory. Because the entire architecture of their behavioral system depends on predictable emotional responses. They know what to do with anger. They know what to do with tears. They know what to do with anxiety and insecurity and the desperate need to be approved of. They have scripts for all of those. Carefully rehearsed, deeply practiced scripts that tell them exactly what to say and do when each reaction appears. But calm, genuine, grounded, unperformed calm, there's no script for that. And so they try again, a little harder this time, a little more pointed. They escalate the provocation because the first one didn't work and they need the data. They need to find the edge. Every person has an edge, a point where the composure breaks and the raw reaction spills out. And a narcissist is extraordinarily skilled at finding edges. They have spent their entire life doing exactly that. But the quiet empath's edge keeps not appearing. Not because they are pretending, not because they are performing stoicism like some kind of emotional theater, but because they have done the internal work. They have sat with their own discomfort enough times that it no longer terrifies them. They have felt their own anger, their own hurt, their own fear, fully and privately, enough times that when those feelings arrive in a public moment, they don't demand immediate expression. They can be felt and held and processed without being broadcast. This is what makes emotional regulation genuinely threatening to a narcissist. It is not a defense. It is not a shield. It is a kind of wholeness. A person who is complete enough within themselves that they do not need to react in order to feel real. And that wholeness cannot be chipped away at with clever provocations or carefully timed criticisms or any of the other instruments a narcissist reaches for automatically. The narcissist keeps looking for the crack, keeps applying pressure to different points, keeps adjusting the angle of the manipulation, hoping to find the place where the empath finally breaks open and gives them something to work with. And the empath keeps breathing, keeps feeling, keeps staying exactly where they are. There is a story most people carry about empaths and narcissists. It is the story of the hunter and the hunted, the strong and the vulnerable, the one who takes and the one who gives until there is nothing left to give. And that story is not entirely wrong. In the beginning of most of these dynamics, it plays out almost exactly that way. The narcissist moves with precision and confidence. The empath opens with warmth and trust. And for a while, the roles seem fixed, permanent, like they were assigned before either person walked into the room. But there is a moment, a specific, quiet, almost invisible moment, where everything shifts. And it doesn't happen because the empath finally gets angry. It doesn't happen because they confront or expose or retaliate. It happens because they simply stop reacting, stop performing, stop trying to fix what was never broken in them to begin with. And in that stillness, something fundamental changes in the entire dynamic. The prey stops running. And the moment prey stops running, the predator loses the one thing the entire chase depends on: movement. A narcissist's power is almost entirely kinetic. It requires constant motion, constant reaction, constant emotional turbulence to feed from and navigate and control. They need you off balance because a person off balance is a person they can steer. They need you reaching because a person reaching is a person whose direction they control. They need you reacting because every reaction tells them where you are, what you need, and exactly how to position themselves to keep the advantage. When the quiet empath stops giving them that motion, the narcissist finds themselves in a position they are almost never prepared for. Suddenly they are the one reaching. Suddenly they are the one who needs the interaction to go a certain way. Suddenly, the emotional labor of maintaining the dynamic falls entirely on them because the empath has quietly, completely, without any announcement or drama, withdrawn their participation in the game. And here is what makes this reversal so profound. The empath doesn't do it strategically. They don't sit down one day and decide to flip the power dynamic as some kind of calculated move. It happens organically. It happens because at some point the empath has seen enough, felt enough, processed enough that continuing to engage in the old way simply stops making sense to them. The pattern has become too clear. The cost has become too visible, and something inside them, something deep and quiet and absolutely certain, just stops. That stopping is everything. Because a narcissist has a very specific relationship with control. They don't just prefer it, they require it. Their internal sense of safety, their self-worth, their entire psychological architecture is built on the foundation of being the one who determines how interactions go. The one who sets the emotional temperature of every room they enter. The one who decides when closeness happens and when distance is imposed. When that control disappears and when the person they thought they had fully mapped suddenly becomes unreadable, the narcissist experiences something very close to panic. They will rarely show it as panic. They are far too skilled for that. It will come out as sudden excessive charm, or cold calculated withdrawal designed to make the empath chase, or subtle escalations in manipulation intensity. or completely rewriting the narrative of the relationship to reposition themselves as the victim. All of these are responses to the same underlying reality that they have lost the thread. The empath is no longer where they left them, no longer responding the way the script requires, and the narcissist cannot recalibrate fast enough. Because the quiet empath is not playing a counter game. They are not trying to win. They have simply exited the arena entirely. They are standing somewhere the narcissist's tactics cannot reach, inside their own clarity, their own stillness, their own unshakable sense of what is real. And from that place they can see the whole game laid out beneath them. Every move, every pattern, every manipulation dressed up as connection. They see it all. They feel it all. And they are no longer moved by any of it.